Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our AEE member webinar today. I am Sharon Houston. I work here at AEE in Atlanta, and I am very happy to be here this afternoon and to introduce to you Mr. Jeff Stoltz, and I will introduce him formally in just a moment. As always, I just want to go over a few of our housekeeping issues first, let you guys know that all of those of you attending today's live webinar will receive a follow-up email in the next 24 to 48 hours. That email will contain a link to your certificate of attendance to today's event and a link to the recording of today's webinar also. So please be on the lookout for that. In terms of copies of presentations, because you guys always ask me about this, and it's wonderful that you are all interested and usually want copies. For today's webinar, Mr. Jeff Stoltz will be giving those copies. So I will share with you his email address in that follow-up email. And if you have any questions regarding the content of today's presentation or would like to request a copy of the presentation, you may reach out to him personally. So once again, thank you everyone for being with us today. And I would like to welcome Mr. Jeff Stoltz. Jeff is Operational Excellence Manager at the Center of Excellence for Raytheon Company. He works in the Circuit Card Assembly Department. He's the Operational Excellence Manager there. And as part of the operations team, he participates in complex and exciting manufacturing projects that focus on lean manufacturing techniques, along with energy conservation, mission assurance, safety, ergonomics, and security. These projects are all components of systems supporting the homeland and missile defense strategies. Raytheon is heavily aligned with the Six Sigma principles, and Jeff plays a key role in teaching the Six Sigma mindset. He has also been instrumental in developing a dynamic co-op program, working with students from a variety of colleges, and we do have a number of those students with us today. Jeff has served on the core teams at Raytheon's Andover facility that have received the following awards. Shingo Silver Medallion Award in 2008, the AME Enterprise Excellence Award in 2009, the Industry Week Best Plant Award in 2011, the AEE New England Chapter Best Employee Driven Program Award in 2011. Jeff often presents at conferences, including our conferences, on such subjects as enhancing employee engagement, improving compliance methodologies, and interactive teaching. Some of examples of conferences at which Jeff has presented include our AEE World, AEE East, the National Grid Energy Efficiency Summit, multiple times at the National VPPPA Conference, 5 times at the VPPPA Region 1 Conference, and multiple times at the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense Conferences. So thank you, Jeff, and your team for being with us today. And I am going to pass control over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharon. Really appreciate that. Let me show you my screen. And delighted to have you all joining us today. We're really excited. As Sharon mentioned, we have a number of co-ops here, and and who will be helping with this presentation. We'll introduce them in a moment. But one of the things that I want to celebrate Sharon for a moment. We are about to do something that I think has not been done in previous webinars. This is going to be a very interactive webinar. We are counting on the success of this will be based in large part on how you participate. We're going to be using a lot of functionality that GoToWebinar has, and so come along for the ride. We're going to have a really good time. So let me introduce some of the team that's here, or the team that is here.
Hi, my name is Chris Boucher. I study mechanical engineering at Wentworth Institute of Technology.
I'm Nolan Brown. I study industrial engineering at Northeastern University.
Hi, I'm Jared Mendes. I study mechanical engineering at UMass Lowell.
Hi, I'm Helene DeStefano, and I study industrial engineering at Northeastern University.
So I want you to look at your toolbars right now. We're going to be using a number of different aspects of the tools. The first one is that you have the opportunity to raise your hand. Some of you already have. We're going to use that in just a moment during the first section to have you be able to show, as a raise of hands, whether your program is engaged in some of the things we'll be talking about. We're going to be using questions both for you to ask questions during the session, but also at times we're going to be asking you questions and you're going to use the question section to answer those. And a new feature today is we're also going to be doing extensive polling during the session. We will launch the polls, ask you to fill them in, and then we will share the results with you as soon as they're completed. Okay, onwards. Why are we here? Why did you join us on a Thursday to talk about energy? And I'm sure that the answer here is that we are indeed all passionate about energy conservation. I'll say the fact that again, we are all sitting here having this dialogue and conversation is a wonderful demonstration of that. The good news, by the way, and I'm sitting with a really passionate group of students here, is that many of our people are already passionate about energy conservation. And the challenge for us, and our challenge, your and my challenge, is how do we connect our people with this wonderful passion that they have with the mission that your organization and my organization has to establish an energy conservation culture. And I suspect you have figured this out and already guessed that we believe that energy storytelling can truly be the bridge to be able to connect with those people, to get them to be a part of this great mission that you and I work on every day. Okay, now, this is about storytelling, so it's probably a really good thing for us to start off with a story. And our story in this case is about Gabe and the soldering iron. I want to also add that we have spent quite extensive effort on the artwork in this presentation. I truly hope you appreciate it. And now I'm going to all have you roll your eyes because I want you to meet Gabe. This is Gabe. Gabe is the type of employee that you and I love having in our organization. He cares. He works hard. He's always thinking outside of the box, always trying to find that next way to improve his processes. And the other thing in Gabe's case, which was also great, is Gabe also envisions himself as an energy superhero. He is always trying to figure out how he can reduce his energy footprint in our workplace as well as at his home. Now, I mentioned that it's Gabe and the soldering iron. So Gabe is one of the operators in our manufacturing space, although I believe the story we have here can apply in a very real sense in terms of the passions involved in an office, in a manufacturing space, pretty much anywhere. If you get the people who have the passion to improve their processes and find a better way to conserve energy. Now, Gabe's job has a number of tasks, but one of the major ones is he solders. I don't know how many of you are familiar with soldering, but this is a soldering iron. He solders components on our circuit boards, and in addition to his passion for energy conservation, he's also, as we are here at Raytheon, very committed to the defense of our country and to protect our warfighters. One of the systems that we build the circuit boards for the brains of in my organization that I'm particularly proud of is something called the exoatmospheric kill vehicle. Okay, what's that? An exoatmospheric kill vehicle, goes to relevance, is a system that's designed to destroy an incoming intercontinental ballistic nuclear missile. So you can't, in my opinion, and you may have your own opinions, but you can't be doing something that we all have our rights to do great things, but that's a pretty important thing in terms of ensuring that our adversaries never think about launching a missile our way. So what you're looking at here is Gabe's original soldering iron. And Gabe looked at it every day and he was very frustrated because, as you can see, the temperature for that soldering iron is set at 750 degrees, which is necessary for the soldering iron to be able to perform its job. But his frustration with it in particular was that that's not the only job he does during the day. Part of the rest of the day, he's doing mechanical work, he might be doing some bonding. So that soldering iron isn't in his hand all the day, but the reality of it is it's 750 degrees all day. So he looks at this, he looks at it, and then Gabe does something really remarkable, in my opinion. And by the way, hours spent on this next animation, so you'll all be blown away, I can tell. He raises his hand. What did you think? Okay, I can see a lot of guffaws, a lot of eye rolling. But he does raise his hand, and this is actually going to lead to our first interaction with you. You have the option of raising your hand. We would like you, please, to raise your hand if your organization has programs where you encourage people to submit ideas, to raise their hands if they have a problem, a concern, or an opportunity for improvement. So please raise your hand if you're, and we have our team here. I'm going to continue with the story, but our team is going to tabulate that report once I get to the end of the story. Are we seeing hands? We're seeing hands. Okay, good. All right. So he raises his hand because he wants to find a better path. And the cool thing was we have Jane, who's our process engineer, and she's really excited the fact that Gabe is interested in this and agrees to research a more energy efficient solution, which is exactly what she should be doing in support of that. And she goes off, and here's the really neat thing. That's Gabe's original soldering iron. She finds, when she talks, does a little bit of research, working with the soldering iron company, that for a very nominal additional price, you can buy this little box that I just put up there, connect that box with the controller, and you'll see the countdown clock. But the bottom line is that when Gabe puts that soldering iron back in the holder, when it hits 10 seconds, watch what happens. The temperature reduces down to 200 degrees. In fact, it will stay at 200 degrees until Gabe needs to use the soldering iron again, picks it up, and within 2.5 seconds, the soldering iron from that base temperature of 200 will come right back up to 750. So the beauty of it is, it's almost no waste for Gabe because, 1001, 1002, and then a little hesitation, the soldering iron is now ready to use, but it effectively mistake-proofed energy conservation for his soldering iron because he doesn't have to think about it. He doesn't need to worry about during the day turning it off and on. He doesn't, he just literally, it will control it itself. If he's not using it, the temperature will drop in 10 seconds. So pretty neat concept. In fact, it was such a neat concept that Jane and Gabe got excited about it and said, we really need to share this. So what do? They go to, and I'm sure many of you have these, a daily team meeting. We call it a tier meeting. But they went to their team meeting and they said, look at what we found. We can add this to this box, wire, and look at what it can do in terms of the soldering iron and how it can save energy. And you can see a lot of smiling faces from their teammates because they're looking at it and thinking, that's pretty cool. Maybe we could be doing that too. So happy days, they go off, and what the effect of this is, Gabe and Jane's impact, is that they took that one solution that they came up with and multiplied it by the early adopters who took it over, then the next group, and by the way, in my organization, we have over 400 people who do soldering. So that's a lot of soldering irons that now are going to have an energy efficient solution. And the key thing here is you take that one idea and you multiply its effect to benefit the whole organization, which is pretty neat. Now, there's a secondary effect. In this case, it was also great. Paul was one of those people who was standing there excited about what he heard. He was one of those early adopters for the soldering iron. And he also has a little bit of the Gabe in him. He would also like to be that energy superhero. He is passionate about it. And so he adopts this, but he thinks, what other things, how else can I contribute? And so he's walking past, he's on second shift. We don't have a full third shift, so a lot of equipment is not needed on the third shift. He walks back past a bake oven where we bake our boards, and he notices at the end of his shift that it's at 250 degrees C, but he looks inside and there's nothing there. So he goes to his boss and he says, is it all right for me to turn this on? And his boss said, absolutely, that's a great idea. So he shuts that equipment off. And by the way, earns his energy superhero designation. All good. So here we go. Growing a team with our Gabes, Pauls, and James, growing the team one idea at a time. Really fantastic in terms of being able to propel our organizations forward. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a moment, but we have polling results. So that 20% of us, based on the hands that went up, have such a raise your hand, and that's great. I'm very passionate about it, and you'll get this a little bit thematically going through that for our organization, really encouraging people to raise those hands, to engage with us, to come up with ideas, to bring forward their problems, makes a big difference in terms of the success of our energy conservation initiatives. Okay, turn things over to my friend Jared.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jared, and I'm going to be asking you to do some polls for us. Our first poll: how long have you been involved with energy conservation programs? less than 1 year, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15, or more than you can count. Polls are in. Half of you have voted.
Going once, going twice. Okay,
Closing the poll. All right. We got a nice even spread amongst the 1 to more than you can count. Most of you got a lot more experience than I do.
yes,
And on to our second poll. How many AEE webinars have you attended? Is it your first, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 9 to 20, or have you lost count with all the different webinars you've done? Got some nice, interesting mid-range numbers right now.
going once, going twice.
And we are closing the poll. All right, so it seems most people have come to a lot of webinars, but we've got some people who are new. Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome.
Hope this can be enjoyable for you. And on to our third poll, we'd like to ask where you're from, where you're calling from. Eastern United States, Central United States, the mountain region of the United States, Pacific region, also including Alaska and Hawaii, or are you an international caller? .71%.
Going once, going twice.
And we are closing the polls. Seems we got a sizable international audience listening to us today. Welcome, welcome. And just barely beat out by the East Coast. Our fourth poll is, how often do you tell stories as a part of your energy presentations or training? Do you use them all the time, regularly, occasionally, rarely, or do you just not have them in your repertoire?
Going once, going twice.
And we are closing the poll. All right, seems like most people use them a little bit. Got a lot of occasionally, but 15% not in the repertoire. Let's see if we can change that today.
Thank you, Jared. Okay, so what's our model for storytelling? We start off with a blank slate. And by the way, you may notice that the slate has different colors. The word slate has different colors. And yes, if you were guessing, you were correct. It stands for an acronym. And that acronym is, first of all, the S for story. So how do we find our stories? That seems to be one of the real stumbling blocks for a lot of us, and we'll talk a lot about that today. The L is for learn. So how do we learn and grow from the story? Because if you have a story, there has to be some purpose pushing it forward. Action, how do we respond to the story to make things better? Because if you have a story and you learn something from it, but you don't take an action, you're not going to realize the benefits in terms of what we want for energy conservation. T for tell. So once you have that success, how do we tell, teach, and share the story to most effectively capture the message, so that we get those additional people engaged? And then energize, E for energize. So once we got them engaged, how do we challenge them to apply what we believe we've learned to truly have a more energy efficient workplace? Okay, fun stuff. Let's start off looking at Gabe's story and seeing how well did it fit that slate approach. So we start off with the story, And by the way, in this particular case, I know Gabe really well. I certainly was not an actionee in it, but I saw that story unfold in front of me. So I saw the story and I recognized it for what it was, a really interesting adventure in terms of trying to find an energy efficiency solution for our workplace. The learning, it starts with Gabe raising his hand. I raised my hand, by the way, right there. Because, it has to start with somebody caring, somebody wanting to propel things forward. He raised his hand, and then with Jane's help, goes off and finds a solution, which ends up being the action. They now find a solution, and they can apply it to that soldering iron to make it mistake-proof the energy conservation that in terms of the use of that soldering iron. Pretty cool stuff. The tell part, of course, then we talked about them going to the team meeting. They tell the team meeting, and the results of that they ended up with a lot of adopters of this solution for soldering iron energy efficiency. And then energized people, well, there you see Paul, somebody who wanted to be an early adopter and then actually took what he learned there and applied it in a different way, also to the benefit of our organization, also to achieve energy conservation successes. So my aha moment, coming back, is that change is hard, but quantum leaps easier if you have people like Fred, Jane, and Paul making it happen from the ground up. And I would add to that, by using energy storytelling to create a conservation culture, gives us a place where people are excited to contribute and improve. And again, we're going to be looking at more situations where it is truly amazing what they can accomplish. So our model for storytelling. So story. First of all, how do we find our stories? And the first one is seeing the story. I already mentioned that I actually had the Gabe and Jane story and Paul's story unfold before me. I call that story awareness. And you can pick up any number of books. So many books that you can pick up on any subject start off with the stories that the author has learned. I would encourage you, if you don't already have it, is to develop that story awareness. So when things happen in your life, that could have applicability in terms of a story about energy conservation, file it away, write it down, store it away, because it will come in handy at some point in the future. So the second one is to remember the story. And many times, I'm trying to come up, somebody will tell me about an issue that they have, and I'll try to come up and remember, from my memory bank, something that happened where I would have a story that could apply to that. And the beauty of it is each of us has our own energy story. And in this case, there was a situation where people were challenging us about, how in our workplace, were there instances that people, might not be aware of what the energy inefficiencies were. And so I'm going to tell you a story about it, because in many cases, as it says there, we have many of them. So my story here has to do with a leaking airline. I was walking around with a number of our energy professional team, and they were teaching us about things that we should look for in the workplace that would be leading indicators of energy waste. And it was almost ironic. They were telling us about how if you hear an air leak, that you would hear the air leak, that would be an indicator that because we use a lot of compressed air, that the air that you are paying the energy for that to compress is now just being released to no purpose. So, and I'm sure many of you have had such similar situations. So we turn the corner, and the first thing we hear is, and there's this workbench, and there are 4 people sitting right around it, where you can immediately hear the compressed air just bleeding off, money just literally going up into the atmosphere in the work area. So we went over and we talked to the people who were sitting at the workbenches, because quite frankly, walking over, I'm annoyed by the sound. And we said, asked them, so, what's that about? And they said, yeah, we've heard that, but it sort of has become wallpaper for us. It's been that way for weeks. And we said, so do you know what's involved with that? Well, yeah, there's some sort of leak there, but, it doesn't bother us. And we explained about compressed air, about the cost involved with compressing the air. And you can see, the eyes go wide. Wow, you mean we've been sitting here in front of this and had taken no action, but also, quite frankly, weren't sure what action to take. So what do they do? Or what do we do? Because we want to demonstrate, not only teach them why the compressed air is important, but we immediately called our facilities group, got a plumber in. Within an hour, the air leak is gone. By the way, their lives are better because they don't have that awful sound around them. They have a quiet, peaceful workspace, and it's this workspace it's not wasting or letting money literally just come out of the connection. So a win-win for them, and the goal there, thinking about the question up front, is when people, it is so valuable, for people who are familiar with the best ways to achieve energy conservation, to share those results. And this is a story where we had the chance to share it. And then the neat thing, by the way, final part of the story, is about a week later, somebody from the same group immediately called our group and said, hey, by the way, we hear another air leak. We called the facilities group. They came, they fixed, which is exactly what we want. So last point here. Let's keep going. See the story. Oh, what did I do? I think I'm going the wrong direction. That will be not good. This is not good. Here we go. Sorry. And after we remember the story, the last thing is collecting stories. Many people have stories. Many of your team members have great stories, and this is a matter then of listening to them, maybe asking them, what are your experiences? What have your experiences been? Or many times they'll come to you if they're having a problem and they'll tell you a story. Collect that story, because that story, once again, can be a benefit to you. Okay, and here's a good example of that. Here's Fred. Story of Fred, a true tale of opportunity lost. I want to see that. So Fred was an employee on second shift. He's a really good employee, again, a lot like Gabe, and he was very passionate. At the end of his shift, he would walk around, and he did this for years, walked around, turning off equipment that clearly wasn't going to be used going into third shift, and saved us, I'm sure, a boatload of energy in the process. But he was a low-key guy. Didn't ask for people to pat him on the back. Didn't bring a lot of attention to himself. He was just passionate about it. Went out and did it day in and day out. So one evening he's walking past another curing oven. In this case, he does what he does every night. He looks in. There's nothing there. He turns the oven off, and he goes home. Feeling like he's done a good. And by the way, he also turned off a number of other pieces of equipment at the same time. Okay, so he comes in the next day, beginning with his shift on second shift, and there is a manager waiting for him who says, Fred, you turned off this oven. We needed that oven this morning. We lost time because you shut down that oven. Just really frustrated with you over doing this. And Fred's sort of stunned. He's been doing this a long time. Didn't even really ask him, why he did it. And Fred, as you can see from the expression, is not happy. And Fred shared with people, and this is how I heard the story. He said, I've been doing this for years, but I'm not turning equipment off any longer because it didn't, it was unappreciated, and in fact, I got into trouble for it. On that note, I'm going to pass things over to my friend,
Chris. Hey, it's Chris, and this is your first discussion question. After hearing about Fred's story, what would you do to improve the situation? Please write your answers in the questions section.
What would you do? How would you have handled the Fred situation?
So Guy says, give Fred some type of operating schedule. That's a great point, Guy.
Wow, they're popping in now.
So it looks like a lot of you are talking about reaching out to the supervisors or different operators, saying how we really have to improve the communication between each other, and that's a great point.
I also like the one where it talks about a better way to schedule or a better way, maybe using a timer or something to turn the equipment on the next morning if you need to have it be available for the start of the shift. I also like I will ask to have sign posted saying, do not turn off. By the way, a great idea and one that we have actually applied in our workplace, because there is some equipment that at critical times you don't want to turn off. Yeah, good, you did good. Okay, this is great. By the way, so I really like the one comment that somebody put earlier, is that this all comes down to, having our management engagement has to be there too, because although it's wonderful when it's from the ground up, you really need to have your leadership involved as well. So that's a really good point. I just wanted to highlight it. All right. So I had a few takeaways. First of all, I think it was a shame that Fred was never recognized. I mean, he may not have been looking for it, but boy, for all the work he did, somebody could have patted him on the back. I mean, people knew he was doing it. They just never took the time to do it. A lot of you talked about communication. Absolutely. There's so many different ways to communicate, effectively and to put that sign up on the oven. Lots of good ways to handle that. And last but not least, respect. The way the supervisor came across, it was like a ton of bricks all falling on Fred's head, as opposed to, saying, Fred, why did you turn it off? Well, we were planning to use it this morning. Fred could very easily have had the opportunity in an equally respectful way of saying, nobody, I do this all the time. Nobody indicated that oven was going to be needed. Oh, well, next time we will put a sign up. So that discussion, that respectful discussion, could have come to a much better conclusion. So we really need to respect our people. And that, coming back to the observation that was made earlier, really comes down to how our management approaches the people that work with them, again, whether in the office or in the manufacturing space. All right, so we talked about stories. How do you get the stories? Let's talk a little bit about learning. How do we learn and grow from the stories? So first of all, you learn knowledge. I mean, without question, there's several instances in these stories that we've already heard that that's true. Jane and Gabe, went and learned more about soldering iron technology and found that there was a great solution. When we were out on the floor with the air leak, we were in a position to give learning to the folks who were going to be in the work area, which then they were able to step and repeat in terms of being able to conserve energy. So some good examples of that. Learning about ourselves, I spend a lot of time thinking about the Fred instance, because it's easy for me to point a finger at the manager, but I almost feel sometimes that my dad has the expression that when you point a finger forward, pointing back at you. And I really feel that that's true in this case, because, how many times, have I been dismissive of somebody, or if somebody tries to raise something up and maybe I wasn't as appreciative of them. So it highlights the fact that, treating our people with respect makes a difference, and certainly that I've learned from that. So learn about ourselves as well, and learn from others. There are a lot of great opportunities there. I mean, Fred certainly, learned from the passion that Gabe and Jane brought. I certainly have learned from all of these folks. So think about how you and I can both learn from the stories that we hear. And then action. How do we respond to our story to make things better? So first of all, it's easy, fix something. We call the facilities group, they come out and fix the air leak. Changing beliefs. I know I've already talked extensively about the Fred story that, how I changed my belief set. Even with the compressed air leak, I would have thought somebody would have raised their hand about it, but without awareness, they just saw it as being the way it naturally was, not something that was an issue for them. So I think that's important. Ultimately, the desire to improve something. A lot of your 20% plus of your hands went up. If I raise your hand, it is all about improving things, and certainly what we saw with Gabe and Jane, wonderful example of a group that came together to really improve a process. And then telling. So how can we tell, teach, and share the story to most effectively capture the message? And the first way, from my perspective at least, is we need to be authentic. It needs to be our true self. You're not making it up. It's the way it was, and people will respond to that, because if you are truly passionate about energy conservation, the stories you have, that you're telling, ring true to the people who you're telling them. That will make a big difference in terms of them embracing what you're sharing. Okay, making it visual. We use stick figures in some cases. That was our way of making it visual, but we want to make it accessible. We want to help our people connect with the material that we're teaching. I'm a big one for having more pictures and less pictures, because I think that it draws people into the story. And ultimately, that's really what it's about. How do we help them to connect? You know, and a lot of times it comes from our passion, it becomes from the information we're giving, it comes from the fact that they see their, and coming back to the one observation, you know, their leaders being passionate about it, but also the people in their organization being passionate about it. You know, the Gabe, the Pauls, you know, and for many years the Fred until we didn't do the best by him. Okay, and then after we do all of that, we need to energize. How do we challenge our team to apply what we have learned to create an energy-conscious workplace? And first of all, we need to give them the why. And a perfect example of that, again, is the air leak. You know, they didn't realize that air going off was wasting a tremendous amount of money. So once they had the why, boy, they were all over it. The next leak, they were there, and they knew also how the path to fix it, which is give them the path. Let them know if they have a problem, what do they do about it? Because a lot of times we assume people will know, but a lot of times people don't know. And so the better job we can do as a part of our stories to give them that path for a solution, the better. And last but not least, where possible, can we give them a goal? You know, what is the challenge for our organization in terms of improving our energy culture, our energy footprint? And, you know, when you have those discussions with your people, you can really leverage off that passion they bring in order to you know, get them, propelling them forward to coming up with those solutions or raising up those issues that are keeping your organization back from achieving your energy goals. Okay, so those are the 5: story, learn, action, tell, energize. And now, Nolan.
Hey guys, so I'm going to be introducing you to the topic of brainstorming. So we're going to identify a topic area for energy storytelling that would benefit your organization. So this could be any topic that you're thinking of, not a story itself, but the topic for a story.
Yeah, we will get to the stories themselves a little later.
And right here, you can use your the question function if that wasn't clear. And right here, we have Tracy saying, turning equipment off, which is exactly what we want to hear, exactly right, similar to the Gabe story. Having equipment on is just wasting money, just wasting energy, and turning equipment off is the best way to combat that.
Coming in.
Yeah, here it is now. And here's a great one. Christina says going above building or energy code requirements during design, and that's great because we all have standards in whatever country we're in, but making buildings more energy efficient in the design itself helps years down the road for as long as your company is in that building. We've also got adjusting the furnace thermostat to a lower degree in the winters. Yeah, awesome. Having people wear, you know, coats. Even we have somebody bringing in a blanket into our office when they're at their desk.
Ouch.
Any way that you can reduce the amount of energy you're using for heating is a great way to bring down the total energy costs for your business as a whole.
And for your home. I mean, I'm sure that a number of you would probably have this number right off the top of your head, but how each degree that you set your thermostat down actually saves you money out of your budget, you know, at home and at work. Good. All right, that was great. So let me share another quick story. Call it the ionizer story. How one person's misunderstanding can lead a whole department to an energy error, which we found very interesting. So many of you probably have energy teams. We have an energy team, and we meet, you know, on a regular basis. And we were having a chat one day, and I need to tell you, I guess, first of all, what an ionizer is. So remember, we build circuit boards. Circuit boards are very susceptible to electrostatic discharge. At least where we are in the East Coast, which many of us who are on this call are in. You know, you all know that if you rub your feet on the carpet right now and you touch that doorknob, what do you get? You get that, that was an error, that was a little zap, by the way. My sound effects probably aren't easily differentiable. But, and that's the problem for us, and with circuit boards, is that little zap that you get on your finger would literally wipe out one of my circuit boards. So we create an environment for circuit boards where it's a chargeless environment, where we dissipate all the charge so that the boards are not put at risk. And one of the ways we do that is we use a benchtop ionizer. The benchtop ionizer essentially takes all of the charged particles in the air and it neutralizes them so that the boards are protected. So one of the other things, just as a note, is that it's much worse when it is cold and dry than when it's warm, because the same way, if you're in a part of the world right now that it is summertime, you can't drag your feet on the carpet and touch the knob and have any hope for success because the humidity will keep it down. So in my work environment, just to cut to the chase, is if the humidity is less than 30%, I have to have this ionizer on in order to protect my hardware. But it's the best practice. We keep it on all the time because we don't want to take any chance with the hardware at all, especially when it's going into things like that exo-atmospheric kill vehicle. So here's the thing, and you just heard me say it, and now you're going to hear the misinterpretation. We keep it on all the time when people are working. That is the intent, because we don't want to take a chance that again, the humidity might go down while somebody's working or something else could happen that could put the boards at risk. But somebody heard that, and they heard the word keep it on all the time, so it's a very easy misinterpretation. So somebody at one point at one of our team meetings raised their hand and said, Jeff, I don't understand why we need to keep our ionizer on all the time. And I explained everything I just explained to you. And then I said, so while you're working, you need to have the ionizer on. They said, oh, no, that's not correct. What we've been told, or at least I was told, was that you keep it on all the time. So in other words, while you're working, when you go home, you leave it on. In fact, when you leave on a Friday, even if there's nobody working over the weekend, you just leave it on, and it's still on when you come in on Monday morning. And I'm thinking like, okay, I can see how you might have gotten that. And in fact, I asked, so where did you get that from? He said, well, Sue over there told George, who told that before it was all said and done, the whole department was doing it that way because they thought that was the right thing to do. So I ended up going to our ESD expert, and I asked what was required. And he said, oh, no, of course, you just keep it on while you're working. When you're not there, you turn it off. For lots of reasons, by the way, that piece of equipment, it costs over $800. So the longer that you have it on, the more you're sort of using it up. So what did we do about that? Well, we took that information, took it back to the team, first of all, and said, thank you so much for bringing this up, because clearly there was a misunderstanding. And the reality is different than what you said, that what you thought you were told, what you shared with us. So what we ended up doing is we ended up doing two things, actions coming out of this. Well, first of all, from a communication viewpoint, we went out and put out messages to all of those team meetings, correcting the error, emphasizing the proper usage for the ionizer. And then the other thing that we did is we really promoted the idea of, if you ever see something and it doesn't make sense to you, you don't have to wait to come to your energy meeting. Please just, okay, you're going to know again, and I put it up again, raise your hand. Because if after they raise their hand, you raise up something that doesn't make sense to you, we will be able to chance to research it, we will get you an answer, and if there is something that's wrong, we will get it fixed. So good outcome in the end, because this not only applied to my department, but apparently like a virus, very bad time when you're thinking of the coronavirus right now, but like a virus, it is spread across the whole facility, and everybody was leaving their ionizers on, which now they don't. So we saved a lot of energy and a lot of cost on equipment. Okay, so 2 quick seconds. How did Slate fit Jeff's ionizer story? So first of all, how did Jeff find the story? Well, he was a part of it. That was one where he saw it himself, learn. How did Jeff and the team learn and grow from the story? Well, we learned that apparently a lot of people were under the impression that this was the way you should handle the ionizers. And we then went off and learned from our ESD experts, which was our action, to check what is the right way to handle it, and got the correct information for that. Beyond that, what did we tell? Well, we went back to the team, to both the energy team as well as the team meetings across the facility, to be sure that we gave them the message what the correct usage was. And then last but not least, in terms of energizing, we were appreciative of the fact that one person raising their hand made a big difference. So we wanted to challenge our people, put the goal in front of them. If you see something wrong, raise your hand. Take that as a great challenge for your organization.
Okay, Helene here. So now we're going to ask you all to think of an energy conservation story from your own personal experiences You can give that story a good title, and then after Jeff tells his next story, we'll have you all type your title and story into the questions box, and we'll discuss.
Fantastic. So this is a tale of 2 light switches, or who forgot to turn off the lights. Okay, I want to show up hands again. How many of you have either been told by your parents, or as a parent told your kids, you know, or asked the question, you know, why didn't you turn off the lights? You got to turn off the lights. So please raise your hand if you have ever had that happen. Okay, good, good. How many were? It's going up. It's going up. We'll evaluate that as we go. So here's my story on this. I don't know how many of you have a garage, but I have a garage very much like this one, other than for the fact that if I took a picture of mine, it would be much messier and I would be embarrassed. But having said that, it has no windows. So one of the tricky things is that it is really, really easy to go into the garage, do something, come out, and you can't see that the lights are on and walk away and the lights stay lit. And in fact, I got into a boatload of trouble because after we had been, after a number of days with nobody going down to our garage, I walked down, opened the door, and all of the lights are on. All of the lights are on. And unfortunately, as it turned out, it was very obvious from the work that was going on in the garage that happened to be was being done by my significant other. So I felt compelled to go up and address this with her. You know, the reasons why we should make sure lights are turned off and the whole 9 yards. Now, I will also add to this that there is an extra problem that I have. There is both a switch in the basement as you're going down to the garage and in the garage. So if you happen to turn the light on in the garage, because you had forgotten to turn it off turn it on to start with, but then turn it off in the basement, the switches can end up in any possible position. So after you close the door, you can't look at the switch and make sure that if it's up, that the light's off, or if it's down, the light's off. You really need to open the door and see that the light is off. So that's a problem. Now, here's the rest of the story. We went away for a week or so, came back, I needed to get something from the basement, I go down to the basement, and once again, the lights are on and bright, and I am about to go upstairs and have a very painful discussion with folks, only to find out when I'm looking at what's going on in the basement, that apparently I was the last person who was in the basement, and I'm the one who left the lights on. So, clearly I have a problem, clearly I need some help, and on that note, Helene.
All right, so now that we've heard Jeff's situation, what advice or insight do you have for Jeff about what he could do to fix this problem? And you can type that in the questions box.
Look at you guys.
So sensors and monitors look like the answer that a lot of you guys are going for, and I agree that does definitely help us save energy here at Raytheon. We do utilize a lot of sensored lights in our offices.
Cool. All right, well, I know what I'm doing when I go home tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, so now you guys can start sharing with us about your energy conservation savings and stories. Don't forget to give those stories a title. And you can type that in the questions box as well, please.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to hand things over to Jared for a moment, who's going to share a story that he had.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jared, and this is my energy saving story. I call it vacation savings. Every year, my family goes on a family vacation. It's kind of a thing we do every year. But before we leave, my dad always makes sure all the lights on are in the house. My mom and dad are a bit superstitious about it. They think that by having the lights on in the house, that people will think that we're home and that nobody will ever try to rob us. However, we come back on vacation and my dad notices that his electric bill is a bit higher than he expected or wanted. So what did he do? He decided to buy some timers, so that any time that we go on vacation from then on, he would plug in the lights into the timers, set them to go off at a certain time, and boom, whenever it was, say, 6 o'clock, it was night, the lights would come on, people would think, oh, some of the family just got home, the lights are on. Not only does that save us a lot of energy by not having to run 24/7 and instead only run for, like, say, 3 to 4 hours a day, but it also makes us safer, because after the first night, we kind of realized that just running the lights all day kind of made it obvious that nobody was home.
Cool. Okay, so what are some of the other stories that folks are coming up with?
All right, so we have one story about using solar posts for landscape lighting. That's a really good idea. My family actually definitely utilizes that around our sidewalks. Let's see what else we have.
We've got one story about changing an electrical water heater to a thermal water heater.
Cool.
Reducing electricity by 50%.
Wow.
We also have stories about having dark offices at night, as well as having an occupancy sensor that'll help gauge when people are actually in the room.
Well, I really like this title from Ron, Right Size is the Nice Size, talking about an exhaust fan that the technician failed to replace with a larger motor, and it caused excess airflow, overheating the system, overheating the room, and things like that, increasing the heat loss.
And Jared from our audience has one titled, The Last Guy Does It, talking about how many companies assume someone turns equipment off, and that some people don't even know what the switches are, so monitoring and education help fix those sorts of problems.
And lastly, a couple other of our audience members are talking about having smart sensors that automatically do this for us, and that can lead to a boatload of energy saving throughout the year.
That's great. And in my garage. Yay. Thank you. Okay, so coming back to our model for storytelling, you've done a great job based on all of the wonderful feedback you've gotten. You've now mastered Slate. We believe that you are, based on that, slated for greatness. And of course, okay, so what's the D for? Gabe wants to know. Again, beautiful artwork there. So, of course, we've had the story, the learning, the action, telling, energizing, and now direction. So how have we defined the direction, purpose, and or theme for our energy-saving story messages? And that's important, because here's the thing. If you do this, if you can find a theme that you can draw together a number of stories on, it can be give you a much more powerful momentum forward in terms of delivering your energy conservation message. Collaboration in our world wins. You know, you can bring, because it may not just be your story. You know, there may be a number of people's stories that you can bring together to create that thematic message that will, again, help your organization find that improved conservation culture. And ultimately, when you get everybody together, you're truly creating a force multiplier. You know, getting a lot of people, a lot of stories, all oriented towards one solution that you want to do in terms of improving your energy footprint. So, for instance, I would say in our case, we had the story of Jane and Gabe, and that's all about how Gabe raised his hand, how he chose to engage, and how, as an organization, encouraging people to do that can make a difference. We have the story of the air leaks, where by teaching people what conservation looks like in terms of compressed air, you know, they're now raising their hand and getting people engaged when they identify leaks. And then, of course, you have the ionizer story, where thankfully somebody on our energy team chose to bring forward and say, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. So I would say, from a raise your hand, how we can improve, how we can correct things that are wrong, you know, and how we can leverage off the knowledge of the organization to find the best path to achieve energy conservation through the desktop ionizer. So you take those three, and what you end up with is a game-changing way to engage our people, to drive your message, and ultimately achieve improvements that your team will be proud of. Okay, so we have a few more polls.
Hello, everybody. This is Jared again with more polls. Do you feel empowered to see, remember, and collect great energy-saving stories to share with your teams? Are you empowered and excited? On the path to great stories? It's going to take some work, but you're committed. Or quite frankly, you're not a story person. And the polls are open.
While you guys are voting, I just want to chime in just briefly to just let you know that we are at 2:57 right now. And those of you listening in, we will go a few minutes over just to continue, but we do understand if you cannot remain connected and you need to drop away. And don't forget that we will be following up with an email in the next 24 to 48 hours with a link to the recording of today's webinar and a link to your certificate of attendance, and also contact information for Mr. Jeff Stoltz if you want to reach out with any further questions or to request a copy of today's presentation. So when Jeff finishes, I will wrap up, but we're probably going to be on, I would think, for maybe another 10 minutes. So thank you, guys.
Yes, and actually for the presentation itself, probably 3 minutes, and we'll be happy to stay after to do some further chatting. So what are the results of the poll?
Well, it seems like a quarter is very excited about their stories, and 50% are on board or getting there. Only 5% aren't story people. We're sorry we couldn't convert you to our side.
But appreciate your honesty. That's why I love polls, because it gives you an accurate understanding.
Here's another poll we have. Do you feel that you have the tools to create effective energy-saving stories? I have a great idea how to create effective energy-saving stories. I'm on the right path to effective energy-saving storytelling. I need more work to develop effective energy-saving stories. Storytelling is never going to be my thing, or I'm already a great storyteller.
Okay, good.
Closing the poll?
Close the poll. There you go.
Seems like a lot of people they say they need some work, but they're on their way. They're on the right path, at least.
Great. So energy conservation storytelling, big finish here. So thank you for joining us on an energy journey where each of us can make a difference for our team by working to find those great stories, help our teammates learn from the stories, identify actions that need to be taken, ensure that the stories get told and shared, and ultimately energize our teams to make these energy savings improvements a reality. And please remember, as you do so, that effective communication through stories can create the connections with our teammates that will help us build a community of energy-conscious people and a sustainable culture of energy conservation practices. So, very much appreciated. 2 final polls, which will help us define the success that we've had here. Appreciate your honesty. And Jeff.
All right. As Jeff said, these are our last 2 polls. Which of the following best describes your feelings about today's session? It was fun and a great learning experience. You enjoyed the session, it had some good takeaways. It was okay, but I'm sure I'll be able to apply what I learned. Not a lot of value, probably won't sign up for a similar session. Technical talks only, please. We're coming up to 50% of the audience has voted.
Okay, how did we do?
Seems like the majority of people enjoyed the session and had some good takeaways. Only 3% were on technical talks only.
Can we respect that?
Yeah, of course.
Good. Last poll question.
Which of the following best describes your feelings about the use of GoToWebinar's interactive features? They made the experience much more engaging and added great value. Definitely a plus to keep engagement and interest. They're okay, but not significantly enhance my experience. Tolerable, but too much work for too little gain. I just want to listen, please. 65% have voted.
I call it.
And we're closing the poll. Seemed about over half enjoyed it or greatly enhanced their experience.
78%. So that's great. We appreciate the feedback because in the end, I know AEE wants to provide you with the best experience in these sessions because it's really about what you can get out of this and getting out of it the things that you need in order to move your program forward. And I want to say thank you so much. This is phenomenal participation across the board. I know we made you work hard, but we certainly enjoyed it, and we're glad to know that many of you did as well. So great. So are there any other questions that are coming in? So I just want to say that I will be available as Sharon was kind enough to say, and again, celebrate Sharon. She made all of this happen. This was not easy. She worked with us on 3 different practice sessions to make it work. Celebrate her, and I'm very happy to share the presentation. I'm also happy to chat with any of you who would like to talk with us.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff, and your team. Special thank you to you, Jeff, for your expertise and knowledge, and thank you for your co-op members right there, Chris, Helene, Jared, and Nolan, for everything that you did today too. So just a few things from AEE before we sign off for the day. As always, we just want to make you aware that we do have a lot of certification training options out there. We have some online programs, we have live training. They are all available for you to sign up for at the website you see on the screen. Please take a look at what we have on offer. These are our events coming up this year. Our first one will be in April, AEE East in Cincinnati. Then we have AEE West in Seattle in June, followed by AEE World in Denver in September, and our first international event will be AEE Europe in Dublin, Ireland in October. So look out for details on these on our website, and we hope to see many of you visiting some of these events. Our next AEE member webinar will take place on Tuesday, February the 11th with Dr. Jairo Garcia. The subject is urban planning and transit technologies to cool cities in a warming planet. So look out for the email coming out to you probably next week. We have 3 different webinars coming up in February, and all the details of those will be in that email coming your way. Finally, we are attending AHR Expo in Orlando in February 3rd to 5th. We will be at booth 770, so if any of you are there, please stop by and say hi to our staff members on the booth. And with that, my final thank you to Jeff, to your co-op members, Chris, Helene, Jared, and Nolan, and to everyone that tuned in today. I look forward to seeing you all on our next member webinar. Bye for now, everyone.